Hi there. This is Progressive Alternative with Victor Monjaras. I'm Victor Monjaras. And today and tonight, or whenever you're going to be watching this, I'm basically going to talk about something that happened basically on Saturday night. Obviously, it happened many other Saturdays before. And it's that whole subject about sexual assault and the culture and why I'm maybe myself and the whole entire culture is that. I remember making this one tweet about, oh yeah, that it was kind of a nice little reference to Barack Obama's speech about how race was not an issue we cannot afford to ignore. And I would think that sex would be that same way as well because we've gone through this whole entire culture of okay, we're okay with showing kids, maybe mass majority, and basically I know especially my family's kind of like that. Oh yeah, they can watch people using drugs, they can watch people just basically beating the hell out of each other, getting all bloody and stuff like that, and just the what was once considered like very vague. You can't show that. You can't have cuss words anymore. FX and some other stations will, or TV channels are now letting the word fuck get through now and shit. And but the one thing that does seem to be just always in the ladder is sex. Obviously, the nudity and just that the whole emblem of just, and not just the whole nudity issue, but more about how do people perceive basically consensual sex or non-consensual. How do you do that? And it was basically because obviously I'm venting, if anybody's seen my tweets or any of the social media postings I've made, that I was going to finally do a video about this, and it's quite an important subject for me, obviously with all the stuff that's around me, and of course with Art Online basically being this show that a lot of criticism is always put on this show, and even very harsh ones too. It's like I see it on these other shows like Goblin Slayer and Hellsing Rising or whatever those other shows were, and no one gives a crap about it. It's like, oh yeah, that's part, and even they say, oh, that's part of the show. It's supposed to be intense and just so cruel and the evilness there. But yet with Sword Art Online, people just really just hate on it and just think, oh yeah, it's stupid. It shouldn't be in there. They don't know what they're doing. The subject's not even important to talk about at all. And that one always invigorates me a lot. Just puts me at a frustrated stage. I'm always just really entailed about what do these people want to really make the claim about, oh yeah, it's, oh yeah, because the Me Too movement is really getting more people frustrated that, oh, you can't touch anyone out of surprise anymore, or you're doing these type of things. That's not what this is about. And they basically also show that it's okay to basically be more consensual, and it's much more better when you're being you're asking your partner or your intimate partner or people doing photo shoots that it's kind of cool because it's your voice, it's real. And it frustrates me a lot that there's this commentary that it is they try to put out something with it, and it tries to be unique with it. Now, Riki Kawahara, the creator of Sword Art Online, is very doesn't really do very good on his research about trying to improve on the circumstances of that, like glorifying the whole rape scenes. That's kind of not really good how you do it. And it's like when you glorify it, you kind of really send the wrong message. Though it is quite still effective to say, hey, at least there's someone that stands up for them and actually, stands up to sexual assaults and rapes. And that's always one of those barriers that is quite just awful to really even discuss, because I remember conversing one time with a high school principal. He's not the principal anymore at Placer, but I think he's doing something with CIF. some sports company. And so we basically said that he wanted to expand the death penalty to also execute people who are found convicted of rape and sexual assault, because when you do that, the person still remains alive and you've taken away their life. You've taken away their ability to really trust people anymore. And that's a very well stance accusation to really promote that. Of course, for me, I disagree with the death penalty. There are always cases where we can't execute an innocent person, or we have to be better than just saying, "Oh yeah, if they kill, we have to also kill them." And it's like that's not really rehabilitate people. That's not really doing that much. And it's just that essence of just what are we really relaying the system, or relaying the moralities that we are giving to our children. I'm just not, and obviously this is obviously going to be a little bit more personal thing, and I do get emotional when I do discuss it. And it's like my mother was in a domestic abuse relationship early on in her life, and so was actually my oldest sister as well. Was when she was dating someone who was uh, he just like really being mean to her and never really considering anything she wanted to do, and when with my mother it was like it was very violent, from what I could recollect from those court files and those just those some of the storytelling. And sometimes even when I ask her what's going on, and it's like, okay, or how is he like, and oh yeah, when you wanted to conceive me, or to be fair, they didn't know if they were going to have me, was it consensual? And she never would really ever tell me if she was uh, if that ever happened, and she always gets uncomfortable about it. And there are some things that you don't need to know. So most likely I must have been born out of rape. And so it was quite a gravitating thing to go through. And I just think about how my mother had to handle all of that, and had to basically go to a culture that doesn't really respect them as well, especially whenever they speak up to governmental officials, or basically people who are supposed to be responsible to handling those crises, such as in the military or in college universities. And one thing that I always make clear about it is that with that is that it's terrible. It's there has to be accountability, and we've made some improvements now. Of course, with this current Trump administration, Betsy DeVos, who's mostly in charge of basically those investigations for college administrations and sexual assaults cases, wants to make it more putting the leverage for the accused to basically intimidate their victims, potential alleged victims. And that's not pretty much of a fair process, and it angers me, because remember what they did with Christine Blasey Ford. I know I'm kind of going all around the place, but sex is kind of something that is universally component throughout our human history, that women were always seen as just okay, they are not equal to men, and so they have to be serviceable to us at any time. We don't care if they just if they're not feeling it. And it was like, you get to have their way and no one's going to do anything about it. It's it's not bad. It's not. It is something that you have to really reconcile with. Just, are you going to be a better person or not? And I get it. Oh yeah, it's like, oh, but if you let all women do it, it's like, oh yeah, say, oh yeah, she's convicting me of sexual assault, she's accusing me. It's like, I can never have a life again. That's what they did with Christine Blasey Ford. Is like, oh, you have ruined Brett Kavanaugh's life, he can never live a very stable life again. He was being a goddamn Supreme Court justice he was never going to have a very stable life, even without those accusations. He was going to be criticized for whatever vote he took on, because that's the public service. That's what you're going to either be criticized or praised for, wherever you go. And again, he's going to be like in a public office facility that he's going to be well protected. Kristen Blasey Ford is a simple, ordinary person who now has to live in fear, facing death threats from a bunch of goddamn conservative people who never, who can't even get their goddamn dicks wet, because they can't do any of that stuff that their granddaddies and their daddies got to do before in time. And so, and so people just really need to understand that yes, times are changing. We can get better with this. We can illuminate pretty well with the whole structure of ourselves. It's a very scary conversation to have about sexual assault, and that's basically relies back with Sword Art Online, with those graphic and very glorified images. And from the episode that I just watched last night, people are so angry about it. Even though when they hear the two girls that are telling Alice that, oh yeah, that they were gonna hurt us, but we did it. We weren't strong enough. They had to step in and stop us from getting raped. Though they didn't use those words, and it was quite. It was quite a sentimental tapestry that states that because they were in a particular kind of world, and oh yeah, it's oh yeah, you can't kill or you can't steal from anybody, but they never cover raping, and they don't actually know the words rape. That's kind of something that I kind of notice is like in the Japanese version of Sword Art Online. There's two versions, but the Japanese version, basically Kirito tells Alice, because Alice was the one that was arresting Kirito and his friend Yujiro of killing their two colleagues, even though actually one of them died and the other one just ran off with a cut off arm, basically telling her why they took those actions, because they were going to rape them. Or actually, in the Japanese version, back to the Japanese version, he says they were going to have their way with them. Much more pronunciation. In the American version, Bryce Papenbrook, who voices Kirito here, actually basically says the words rape. He literally says the words rape, and I applaud there. It's like that. We're not getting around this. That's the case. That's the thing we need to applaud. It was sexual assault. It was uncomfortable, and it's just, yeah, it's a hard issue to tackle. And I get that that's why he's the greatest hero of all time, because he's the only guy that I know of that, at least, actually, he's only of maybe one or two, one of three people that have actually encountered rape, at least in pop culture or any other type of essence of reality that at least I know of, that has taken on rape. Or because I never seen Superman or Batman or any of those other superheroes or other heroes that were always being told to basically illuminate ourselves after. They never saved anybody from rape. And to be fair, it's kind of hard to pull that off. And of course, with Sword Art Online, you're kind of trying to be a pioneer of this, so you're going to be kind of sloppy. And unfortunately, Rika kind of glorified that, and you didn't have to do that. But back to the matter, that in the American version, then of course when Alice is talking to the two girls, Rodney and Tessie, to let them know, it's like, oh yeah, answering their question about why they were actually arrested. It's like she has an idea of that, or she doesn't have not much of an idea with it. It's like, but I would think like, wait, Kirito blatantly just told you in the American version. I guess that was kind of the faulty sentiment. Is like the words rape, and I guess they couldn't work around that because the Japanese and American translations kind of have to stay within the relevancy of each other. You don't want to scrutinize between your distributors and companies there. So I guess you work that in, and plus it does make sense story wise that, oh yeah, when Alice heard the words rape, she probably couldn't process what that actually meant because he never actually went to describe what rape is. So I guess I'm gonna have to excuse you with that a little bit, and that's kind of the discussion we end up with ourselves as well. That when we have to have better sexual education to teach our kids, to teach people, even the people around us, even if we pass all these laws, let's just assume I'm going to assume Bernie, please let me. Bernie Sanders is president, and everybody else is in their desired places. Tulsi is the Secretary of State. Amy Klobuchar is the vice president. I'm just going to let everything is just going to come away from the Trump administration. What they did to basically dehumanize women who come through. I mean, in the immigration systems, and when they're trying to escape from sexual assault from those that want to harm them more, and everything else changes. So we live in that type of fantasy world, okay, or not fantasy. So let's say that happens. Yes, we can pass all the laws we can to basically prevent to prevent sexual assaults from happening around the country, or have a better system to properly handle those systems. We can pass all those laws, but just like the LGBT rights laws, it's the culture. It's the culture that you have to teach them to say, yes, that that is what that person wants to be identified with, or that is how you process the information. You don't automatically say to them that, oh, you have to say that something happened within the first hour, otherwise it never happened ever. And that is something that is going to be something in the culture. It's like, oh yeah, but if she's just only going out there just to, and I always keep saying she because the mass majority of basically these sexual assault incidents are female victims are females. There's a very rarity that men get sexually assaulted, but there is some. Not to say that there's none, but there is some, or like a very few. And most of those men who do get assaulted do tend to be those who are trans or gay. And so, of course, this is just me who's read some stuff, some sources, such as the Washington Post or some essays of the U.S. Census or whatever sources I could get into that's official and not just simple Facebook posts. Like, I actually want to get to the source. Oh, and some organizations that do promote these issues as well, such as Defend Our Defenders, or no, Protect Our Defenders, and Southern Poverty Law Center, and such organizations. That's kind of what I'm coming from. And so, yeah, the mass majority of them are women. That's why I keep saying she. She's just only going out there to get the fame, and she's not telling the truth. And they call her sluts, they call her whores, and that's harsh, and that is hard to overcome in that culture. And it's about looking into the facts, or looking into the evidence that they have properly made. It was quite divisive when it was Christine Blasey Ford. I always kept comparing it between that, because when Christine Blasey Ford talked about how every detail of how that sexual assault happened to her, even basically close to rape, it was basically the same thing that happened in that episode of Sword Art Online when that rape happened, or at least attempted rape, because they never actually got their dicks in them. But they were just like, they were choking them, and they were on top of them, and just really seeing. I always compare it to that, even though there's like the outcome's different, because Christine Blasey Ford suffered. There was no one really there to believe her, at least within after all those years, and even when she did finally came out to basically speak up, she met some resistance. As like, don't never talk to me about this ever again, or just like, oh, you just have to do it, not because for the country's sake, not for your sake. You gotta balance it out. You gotta make it that it is something that she wants to do, and in her forums and interviews, which has been very, very rare, because basically being targeted by a bunch of goddamn conservatives that want to goddamn control women's bodies, is kind of is a goddamn hurdle. And so it's it's quite a segment of just of the human society that has to get over that, or get, better adapt to the whole circumstances that we have to endure, I guess. And it's like I've gone through it too. I've been accused of sexual assault as well, though, and I cooperated. I talked to them. I told them I didn't do anything to her. I didn't. Yeah. I will admit I did make her feel uncomfortable when I was just talking to her, and kind of just making these references about, sexual favors hypothetically, and just being an asshole about it. But I didn't hurt her. I didn't do any of that essence that, And then basically they come up and tell me that I'm the dean of the school, literally the dean of the school. I was at a community college at back then. Told me that I was a danger to women, and that I was expelled from the school, and that's always going to stick in my mind. And even though I help out a lot of these organizations, as you can see, or at least try to do at least something about it, uh, that's always going to be something that will be preferable, and that will be quite important in my lifetime to say that, sure, uh, you may not have done the worst things, but you still have to own up to your mistakes and learn from them. Because if you don't, this whole entire society is not going to improve very well. So, of course, Sword Art Online needs to, obviously they're not going to do any more rapes. They're not going to do anything more in that fracture. But I think too, and people just say, yeah, well, that's not necessary. We don't need to know anything about it. Our age of technology is advancing. Remember, the whole story plot line of Sword Art Online, and I get it. I might sound like, oh my God, this is going to happen because it happens in 2022. It could not. But, with how fast technology is actually coming by, it's a possibility. It probably won't be as like glorified and very well developed as what we see in the show, but it is going to be in that component. And in fact, we are actually already facing this too, because there are people who like to express themselves online and have to get through their social media accounts and interacting with each other. Say that, oh yeah, they're pretending to be this one person, but they're really this person in reality. And you have to have these type of safety measures to do that. In fact, in this edition of Sword Art Online Progressive, they actually, in the last like, God, like 15, 20 pages, it's this whole activism about, oh yeah, it's like, how do you better prepare your words, or your passwords, and how do you better interact with people online, to make sure that your information is not stolen, or that your livelihoods are not taken away, because there are things that happen online that can affect you. And I know this kind of is far away from sexual assault, which is actually quite connected, because one of our representatives all the way down in Los Angeles, Katie Hill, she basically had to suffer through like someone who was like her boyfriend, and it's like he got all her nudity or any type of photos that were that showed her in that type of lavish sexual way onto the internet, and that's kind of what they call revenge porn. That's something that it scars people, because people who look for jobs and look for to revolve, and their families get to see it too if that comes to circumstances. It's like the internet again is a very scary place, but it's also very beautiful if you know what to do with it, if you know how to handle it, if you really balance it pretty well. And by the way, that progressive manga, Riki actually wants that to be adapted into an anime. So, and most of the stories in there that do happen are quite intriguing. And actually, I would think that some of the SAO lover or haters would actually enjoy that, just like they enjoyed with the alternative Gun Gale Online version. And so, that's something that is quite important to discuss. Do you agree, disagree? Leave in the comments, like, share, subscribe, and yeah, just keep on living. Keep on basically being a better person around there. It's going to be tough, but when you have the best of friends and people that can truly understand what you're going through, and you stand up and fight for those things, that is something worth fighting for. And then I guess maybe that's why I have that attachment with Sword Art Online. And yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to all those ravishing haters who just say, "Oh yeah, it's like you're liking this because it shows rape." No, I'm not. That's not it. Oh yeah, because yeah, it's like, oh yeah, because you were born from rape, you're gonna be attracted to the show. Um, Not completely, but I guess I can relate to that. I can actually just basically say that uh, it impacts me a lot more. And my goodness, I it's not to say that the women don't matter, but what is important is to say that you have to stand up for people that suffer from sexual assaults and from these domestic abuse relationships and anything that is a violation of human rights. That's basically what it's all comes down to. Definitely looking forward to basically improving on that and making sure that we become better human beings. So I was hoping to make this pretty short, but again, very personal subject for me, and it was good for me to vent out. So, comment, like, share, subscribe once again. This has been Progressive Alternative with Victor Monjaras. I'm Victor Monjaras, and you have a great weekend or just life. Yeah, nailed it. Got out the first try.